So let's look at dividing by whole numbers or by decimals sometimes. But in every case, let's look at what happens when your division calculation doesn't work out exactly, when you have something left over, a remainder. We'll look at it and we'll talk about how maybe you've grown up writing your remainder, and maybe talk about a couple of ways, well, we definitely will talk about a couple of ways in which you might write your remainder differently to make yourself a bit more grown up and present a more accurate final answer. Let's take 527 divided by 4. That means, divided by 4 means how many times does 4 go into 527? If you've grown up in England, then you've probably learnt to set your work out a little bit like this, and that's fine. If you haven't, then I bet your way is not hugely dissimilar, and I bet this will make sense to you. So we'll go with this for now and see how we get on. Okay, so we write the number we're dividing inside our box, our cage, our bus stop, our bus shelter, or whatever else you want to call it. And we write the number we're dividing by on the outside in front of it. And we say to ourselves, one bit at a time, how many 4s go into, first of all, 5. And of course 1 falls into 5, and we have 1 left over. And I'm used to putting my remainder there in front of the next digit to make 12. And then I say to myself, okay, how many times does 4 go into 12? And the answer is 3 times exactly. And then I say to myself, okay, finally, how many times does 4 go into 7? And the answer is it goes in once, but I have 3 left over, don't I? And a lot of us, when we grew up with our division, we got to this point, we said, okay, it doesn't go exactly, we've got 3 left over, so we write something like R3 at the end, to say remainder 3. You might write rem 3 possibly, you might even write remainder out in full. Hopefully you don't put a decimal point and then a 3, because that would be absolutely wrong. So we'd write an answer of 131, remainder 3. And that's great, because it's exactly right. And that answer can help us sometimes. That answer can help us with questions like, I don't know, let's say, if you can get 4 cakes in a box and you have 527 cakes, how many boxes do you need? Well, the answer, this answer tells you, doesn't it? It means you'll need 132 boxes to get your cakes into, because 131 boxes won't quite get them all in. 131 boxes will leave you with 3 cakes left over. You need that last box, that 132nd box, for your remainder, for your 3 leftover cakes. So it helps with questions like that, but sometimes you might want to be able to give a more exact answer. So let's take that same sum and have another go at it and see what we can come up with. Okay, first method. There are basically 2 things you can do with the remainder, and here's the first one. Let's do it again, our calculation again. 5 divided by 4 is 1, remainder 1. 12 divided by 4, 3 4s make 12, and 7 divided by 4 is 1, remainder 3. Now the first way you can deal with the remainder is to turn your remainder into a decimal fraction, and we can do it in this way. We can elongate our little answer box a little bit, our line here, make it a little bit longer, and instead of writing 527, we can write 527, and then a decimal point, and then a couple of zeros. Why not? 0, 0, I'll put 3. I don't know how many I'm going to need right now, but I'll just drop 3 in there for now. You might just start with 1 if you wanted to, but I'll put a 2 or 3 just to make my life easier, possibly in a minute. Because, of course, 527 as a whole number is the same as 527.000000000. We could go on and put zeros there forever and ever and ever, and it wouldn't change the size of the number, would it? But the fact remains that they are, if we want them to be, they are there. 0.000. It adds nothing to the value of the number, but mathematically it's correct to say that it's the same thing. So if we put a decimal point in our question, then we'll make sure we put a decimal point in our answer. And now we've got something we can put our remainder in front of, haven't we? I can take my remainder of 3 that I had just now and put it in front of that first 0 to make 30. And now I can say how many 4s go into 30. And I reckon 7 4s are 28. So I reckon it's 7, remainder 2. And I can take my 2 and put it in front of the next 0. If you haven't already got the 0, you can write it in now. And to make 20. And now, haha, how many 4s go into 20? What is it, or is it not? 5 exactly. It is, isn't it? So 527.4, so 527 divided by 4 is 131.75. So we can take our remainder and turn it into a decimal fraction. Do you want to do that again? Because it's quite fun, really, isn't it? Let's do another one. How about 216 divided by 5? Let's write it out in the same way as we have been doing, like so. Okay. And we say to ourselves, does 5 go into 2? No, it doesn't. I haven't used the 2 at all. I'll just carry it across to the next digit and make 21. Does 5 go into 21? Well, 4 5s are 20, so it goes in 4 times to the left with 1 left over. And does 5 go into 16? It goes in 3 times, doesn't it? 3 5s are 15, There's 1 left over, and what am I going to do with that 1? That's right, I'm going to write my decimal point, and I'll write a couple of zeros. Make sure the decimal point in the answer as well. What was my remainder here? 3 5s, 15, I had 16, so I've got 1 left over. That makes 10. And how many 5s go into 10? 2 exactly. So I don't need that last zero. I didn't need to worry with it. But it doesn't matter if you put it there. So that gives me a final answer of 43.2. 216 divided by 5 is 43.2. Does it work, I hear you ask? With decimals as well, when you're dividing decimals? Yes, it does. Look. 23.62 divided by 0.4. Well, if you watched the video about dividing by a decimal, or if you've just been paying attention in class this past year or so, you'll remember that dividing by a decimal is a bit tricky, isn't it? And we said actually much easier to make the number you're dividing by into a whole number. In this case, 4 would be nice, wouldn't it? And we can turn 0.4 into 4 by timesing it by 10, can't we? Move the decimal point 1 space to the right. But the only thing you have to do, we talked about in the video previously, is make sure we do the same thing to the other numbers. We're going to times that by 10 as well. This number here does not need to be whole. It doesn't matter if this is a decimal. We can deal with it just fine. So 23.62 times 10 is 236. 236.2. Let's move the decimal point 1 space to the right.